It's time to talk with Jay Foss.
Thanks so much for calling in. I really appreciate you.
You're welcome. I appreciate you too, Jay Foss.
The magic happens when you have the right person in the right place at the right time.
If we're having fun, everyone else is going to have fun naturally.
Keep it local radio.
I'm obsessed with transformations on this show. And so I guess that in this case, you are that paradigm shift. You are the thing that transforms people. That's what people call me.
Want to connect with Jay? Dial in.
But then the question is everyone tuned into the right frequency?
Are you tuned in?
Making our corner of the world a little brighter.
Did you make the right decision here? Like, are you, did you bite off more than you can chew?
In figuring out what makes people tick whenever we start something new.
Yeah.
There's always that question of
raising your inner voice.
Wait, was this too much? Did I start hiking a mountain that's a little too high for my level of experience?
With Jay Foss.
It's a quote by Thoreau. The price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it.
Not just another talk show.
We cover all things that make us human.
It's time to be heard.
How can my values and how can these inner thoughts that I have help me be a more whole human being?
Online and on air.
We can't legislate being a good, decent human being. So what can we do? We can become more active in this community.
Raising your inner voice with Jay Foss.
Hey, party people. Thanks so much for tuning back in once again. This is Raising Your Inner Voice. I take this liminal time on Sunday evenings to delve into what it is that makes you and I human. I have this strange view that we are more interrelated and interconnected than we may think. And ways that I express this strange view is by doing deep dives, interviews, and conversations with special guests. And I happen to have a special guest on this evening. I happen to have Tracy Chang, who is the chef owner of Pagu in Cambridge. And Tracy, thanks so much for being here. Why Pagu? Tell me about this restaurant that you have in Cambridge.
Hey Jay, yeah, thanks for having me on today. Pagu means pug in Japanese, and pug means pagu in English. So I am the crazy pug lady. I've always had black pugs since I was a kid. And when I was trying to think of a great name, a lasting name for a restaurant, something that I could never grow tired of, nothing really stuck more than 5 minutes. And I noticed that my muse, my dog, my black pug, was looking at me and always just kind of like tilting her head. So I thought, oh, well, duh, why not call it Pagu?
Yeah, there we go. And I should explain that Pagu is a fusion between Spanish tapas and Japanese small plates, right?
Yeah, Spanish-Japanese tapas is kind of the short way of saying it. Interestingly enough, I had someone recently say to me, one of my chefs I just hired, when I asked her, why does she want to work with me? She's never been to my restaurant. She's read a little bit about me. And she framed it in a really nice way. She said, I'm interested in third culture cuisine. And I had to look that up. I was like,
yeah.
Third culture cuisine. I was like, what does this mean? And it's interesting. Have you heard of third culture cuisine?
I have not. Please explain.
Yeah, so I was born here in Boston. My parents were born in Taiwan, and their parents were born in China. And so my grandparents on both sides had fled the war to go to Taiwan. And then both of my parents didn't know each other at the time. They were born there. My dad came to the U.S. a little bit earlier. He was, I think, 10 or 12. Came to Cambridge, Mass. My mom came later in her, 20s, early 20s.
Yep.
And so I grew up here. So I'm Taiwanese American, and that confuses people sometimes. When I lived in Spain, people were like, what does that mean? Like, you're Taiwanese or you're American? Which one? And then of course they were like, but you're Japanese, right? Because they had only met those who said that had only met Japanese people before. So
Okay.
of course that was very exotic to people, right? But I mean, anywhere I've ever lived or traveled to in the world, people often like to ask that, right? But where really are you from? Like, who are you, right? What cuisine are you making, right? And I don't think it's so much about nailing it with like one checkbox,
Yeah.
right? And, we all have such varied personal experiences. And I mean, to call it fusion versus confusion, right? To call something authentic, to call something traditional. I mean, what do these words even mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean, what's traditional and authentic to one person might not be the same for someone else, and they could have totally different, upbringings, even if they were within the same area code,
Right.
right?
Right.
So anyway, so I thought third culture was kind of interesting because, it's not just one culture, it's not just one place, it's not just one cuisine. Um, and so, I've been reading more about that.
Yeah, that's really interesting because my takeaway from it, obviously, I'm not a chef, so I don't have that aspect to it. But I think that, I mean, when people get behind the whole concept of America being a melting pot, right? I think that that is applicable to what you're saying because lines that are easily drawn don't necessarily define the people who make up a community.
Hmm.
And I think that that is an easy application, though in your context, you're talking about food, but I mean, trying to define and separate communities in anywhere in the U.S., I think is a hard thing to do if you're putting a label on it.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean more specifically, right? Like I can point to examples on our menu. So if you were to come in and you were eating a croqueta, right?
Hmm.
In both Spanish and Japanese cuisines and many other cuisines, French cuisine, Dutch cuisine, Brazilian cuisine, right? There is some kind of a fritter. Maybe they call it a croquette, a croque, a croqueta. These are all synonyms in different languages. But maybe it's bechamel based, where they use kind of like a milk and flour to make a roux, to make this very kind of creamy, unctuous fritter. Or perhaps it's a kind of whipped potato base, right? And so, who owns the croqueta? Who owns the
Uh,
croquette? Where did it start, right? History was written by people in power, so who am
yeah.
I to say in 2025, like where the origins are, right? Like my job is to make sure that it tastes good. We
Yeah.
don't kill anyone. But no, to make sure that it tastes good and to, hopefully make something so delicious and so interesting and be able to tell such a narrative that people are questioning more, you know, about, oh, like how could I make that at home? Oh, like I've traveled to here and I've had this version, and to kind of get excited about that and sharing that versus just, try and put it in a box.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. Well, and so let's talk about for a second why you got started in the restaurant industry.
Sure. I mean, back in the day, I guess my earliest memory is that my grandmother, when I was one, ran a restaurant for 8 or 9 years, maybe 10 years.
Okay.
And that is my kind of earliest, fondest memory of just loving restaurants, living in restaurants, going to her restaurant every week, every weekend, all special celebrations happening there, every day, things happening there. Guy with the big cello would always come in. I guess his name was Yo-Yo Ma.
No
Uh,
way.
yeah, who knew?
Wow.
Like sushi. So yeah, so my grandmother had this successful Japanese restaurant in Cambridge in the Fresh Pond area from about 1988 to 2000. And so as a kid, I was just growing up with my cousins all around playing hide and go seek in the tatami rooms, right? And drinking Shirley Temples and scooping matcha ice cream. And those are just like the best of times, you know?
Yeah.
Just like want to recreate that. I mean, probably too big now to play hide and go seek, but my kids love it, you know? So anyway, so I always thought that I could take over that restaurant someday. Didn't end up happening. She retired when I was 10. No one else wanted to do that. All of her kids, you know, wanted to do something else. And so she sold it to someone that worked with her, and my dreams were crushed.
Oh no.
Or, you know, maybe just like laid dormant for a little bit. So yeah, I tried to do all the right things. I, you know, studied hard, played sports, got good grades, you know, started out pre-med, then studied finance because it was practical. It wasn't really my passion, I think though. My passion really was connecting with people. And if I could go back and study, you know, take whatever I want in college, I would take all the languages. I would take,
Mm.
yeah, I loved languages. And you know, what bothered me so much about college was that, oh, you have these core requirements. In order to graduate, you must take this, this, and this, right? And I wish that I could just, you know, take different languages, because I mean, I found them to be just kind of naturally like easy to pick up. But I really liked just speaking language with folks and understanding their lives. So, uh,
Wow. I
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
that's really sophisticated. For anyone just tuning in, this is Raising Your Inner Voice. My guest this evening, Tracy Chang, is the chef and owner of Pagu in Cambridge, and we're talking about how she became to own this restaurant. But on the languages side, are there certain languages that were drawing you?
I mean, I learned Spanish in fourth grade because we had to pick Spanish or French.
Yep.
I learned Mandarin growing up in our household. So English was my second language. I think was my first language.
Hmm.
Um, I remember my preschool teacher being worried because I didn't speak for the first year. And then in the second year, she was like, "This kid won't shut up." Or maybe, you know, they figured out that I actually knew what was going on. I don't know. I wasn't a chatty kid. I was very shy. I think I still am 51% introverted,
Yeah.
according to Myers-Briggs.
Right. So you're right on the line. I'm also right on the line. I feel like it depends on the day. Some days, if I'm around other people too much, I need alone time. If I'm by myself too much, then I need to be around other people.
Yeah, I get that too. I think I was like ENFJ, even though it says I'm 51% extroverted, but I think it's really an I.
That's so
Because yeah, I'm
interesting.
surrounded by people every day. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, so I love languages. My parents were like, "Yeah, you can't study psychology and sociology. Like, what are you gonna do with that, right?"
The
Um,
practical side coming
so
through.
yeah, practical finance. And you know what? They were right in some senses. A lot of that is to me like, basic knowledge, like case studies, you know, P&Ls, run a spreadsheet, like all that's just like pretty second nature. I mean, I never worked in finance, but I like that I have that background of how to do that.
Hmm.
Plus, like all my friends who actually work in finance are pretty miserable. Or you know, like it's a means to an end. Like
Yeah.
they can live a certain lifestyle. They can afford to come to, you know, nice restaurants and have great experiences and travel the world, etc. But, you know, do they find joy in their everyday, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Well,
but
and that's so on point for this program is because I'm really curious at what makes people tick and
mm,
what makes us come alive, and are we actually living our lives doing those things that make us come alive?
mhm. I hope so, because I mean, we got one shot, right?
Exactly.
And why spend it, at a desk all day or, frustrated with this and that all day when you could, kind of pave your own way. And I mean, earlier before we signed on air here, we were just saying, oh, we're doing so many different things, right? Master of none, jack of all trades, whatever you want to call it. But, somehow that is fulfilling.
Mm.
There was this guy I met once in Paris. I cooked a dinner at his house. His name was Jim Haynes. He's since passed. I think he would have been like 96 or 98 now. An American, a sculptor, I believe, and a theater, you know, organizing kind of guy. I cooked a dinner at his house and he gave me one of his books, actually two of his books. And he wrote about fullering. That was the term, fullering.
Huh.
And I remember like one of the first chapters saying, if you are a grave digger, are you fullering? Are you living your life to the fullest? Are you happy? Is your cup full? Right? If you're a grave digger.
Yeah.
So then he gets all super philosophical about this and saying, like, is that a way to live? Well, it kind of depends on the person, right? Like if they enjoy the
Absolutely.
work, then it's not work, blah, 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 right? So I often go back to that kind of thought of, I'm not digging graves, but sometimes I'm braising a lot of pork belly like I was doing earlier today, or I'm cutting a lot of chicken for chicken katsu. Like sometimes there's just like big batch like production for caterings and other events that we have. And sometimes you can feel like that task gets a little bit mundane, gets a little bit tiring, or maybe you're fullering. Who knows, right?
Mm.
But you got time to think while you're cutting all that chicken and pork and, vegetables or cooking rice or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you must balance out both taking care of the back end of the house as well as greeting guests and taking care of the front end of the house as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely don't run the restaurant alone. I have 35 employees on payroll. Just sent that through today, before the 5 o'clock cutoff. Um, you know, part-time and full-time. But I think people are often surprised when, they call the restaurant and they're like, wait, is this Tracy? Why are you on the phone? Or they come to the host stand and I'm like the first person or the last person that they see and they're like, wait, you're the chef owner? Like, why are you doing this? Right? And I'm like, well, I'm very hands-on. I'm
Mm.
not one of those, for better or for worse, I'm not one of the kind of owner operators that can just say, oh yeah, I'll find someone else to do it. I can do every single position in the restaurant and train people on it and my mentors weren't like that. That's the interesting thing.
Oh, yeah.
They were good at, kind of one thing, or two things, right? They were like Martin in Spain when I worked in San Sebastian, Spain for three-star Michelin chef Martin Berasategui. He didn't speak other languages. He spoke Basque and he spoke Spanish. In English, he only knew the words duty free. Because the airport, right? Barely knew like hello, goodbye. Barely knew how to like turn on his iPhone. But he was a very exigent guy. He was a very good cook, very good chef, very good pastry chef, had a great palate. But I mean, he was a very good leader and he knew how to lead and how to delegate and how to kind of, get the best or worst out of people. Um, and I think that's what I thought, was like a strange type of leadership because I always wanted to learn everything, right? I'm like, well,
Mm.
if I'm gonna have a bar, I got to learn how to make drinks. I got to learn how to make sure people aren't stealing. Got to make sure, how we set up a system for this, right? Like I got to do everything. I got to learn everything. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a different type.
A different type indeed. Dear listener, I hope that you're gaining a lot from this conversation. We'll be right back as we speak with chef owner of Pagu, Tracy Chang.
Stay with us as we continue raising your inner voice with Jay Foss.
Hi, folks. This is Gerard Moynihan of Moynihan Lumber. If you're replacing the windows in your home, please see the Anderson 400 series windows on display at any of our 3 locations in North Reading, Beverly, or Plastown, New Hampshire. The Anderson 400 is attractive, durable, energy efficient, and reasonably priced. Remember, Anderson is the most trusted name in windows. See the Anderson 400 at any of our 3 locations. That's North Reading, Beverly, or Plastown, New Hampshire, or at MoynihanLumber.com.
Moynihan Lumber, we measure up.
If you have any issues, topics, or voices that you think would be great to be heard on this show, please reach out, jay.foss@me.com. If you want to add your voice to the conversation, record a voice memo and email it to me, or tune in live, Sunday evenings at 7 p.m.
How's your 401k? I'm Luke Noble of Noble Financial Group. As a certified financial planner, I know you can't plan for everything, but we can prepare you for life's twists and turns. We'll make a plan to help your money last through your retirement years. Our team is dedicated to helping you achieve your financial goals. Let us help. Visit noblefinancialgroupllc.com.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through MML Investor Services. Member SIPC. Noble Financial Group is not an affiliate or subsidiary of MML Investor Services.
Making our corner of the world a little brighter, online and on air. Raising Your Inner Voice with Jay Foss.
And we're back on Raising Your Inner Voice. This evening, we're speaking with Tracy Chang, who's the chef owner at Pagu. It's a James Beard Foundation nominated Spanish-Japanese tapas restaurant located in Cambridge. And leadership is something that we just touched off on. What have you learned from other leaders that you've mentored under?
Yeah. What have I learned? Interesting. I've learned a lot of what to do and a lot of what not to do. Teamwork is very important, and having a team that shares the values that you uphold and shares the standard of excellence that you want to kind of execute on every day, I think is really important.
How do you instill those values?
Yeah. I mean, good hiring practices for one, like you got to find the right people, the right fit. I don't think you can, just develop that into people and convince them later that it's a good idea.
Yeah.
As much as I've tried in terms of, oh yeah, let me, they're just kind of green. Let me give them a chance. Let me give them a chance. I'm definitely still kind of probably too lenient in that aspect. But I am lucky to work with great managers who now do the kind of interviewing and screening process. And I come in a little bit later and I don't do the initial ones as much anymore. Because I just get too excited. I get too excited about people and I believe in them from like day one. And sometimes it's not even like a good fit, like to begin with. And I don't always, try to look for that in the first moments.
But that's good that you know that about yourself, right?
Yeah, I'm just in those ways, like I think I'm just like too optimistic and too nice. And even if I have to be, like bad cop, which none of my managers want to be, like I definitely have a good gut feeling for that stuff.
Okay.
But I'm always like, oh yeah, like not 3 strikes, you're out. It's like, here's another chance, here's another chance. But I'm lucky that I have really great friends and kind of advisors outside of the restaurant industry who are like, yo, like, I feel like I've heard this story before. This sounds kind of ridiculous. Like, this person needs to go. And I'll be like, oh, you're right. You're right. You remember. So,
wow.
But, thankfully that doesn't happen too often. But, like restaurants are just fast paced and every day. Like you got to do sprints and you also are doing sprints like during a marathon.
Yeah.
If you are just sprinting every day, you're going to burn out. Right. And so you really have to lean on your team members. Like maybe this is more like a relay race. I don't know why I'm making these kinds of like analogies because I'm really a soccer player, I'm a soccer player. I don't know why I'm doing these like, track and field and cross country analogies.
Yeah, well, teamwork applies to soccer too.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, can't just be one person that dribbles it all the way down the field.
There we go.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
point.
And you gotta, if you're like what, Barcelona, you gotta play tiki taka and pass around, right? These short little passes, and it's more of a game of passing and keeping what do they call possession of the ball than
Mm,
it is just like scoring, scoring, scoring all the time. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and that
You need
hopefully that
endurance.
endurance, yeah, pays off.
Endurance, you need grit, perseverance, and vision. You got to be able to see beyond the next, 5 minutes, the next 3 days, the next, 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you get the vision for Pagoo?
Um, I mean, in my senior year of college, when I started, to realize that we were all about to graduate and I didn't want to go into finance and the whole, financial world was kind of crumbling anyway. I mean, I still love like case studies. I still love like financial analysis, not career-wise probably. But that's when I started getting my feet wet in restaurants. So I worked in fine dining Japanese at Oh Yeah. From there, I went to Le Cordon Bleu Paris. From there, I went to Martin Bracetegui in Spain. And then I came back to Boston and I did a bunch of other things that were not just, kind of working in restaurants. Like I was a teaching fellow at the Harvard Science and Cooking program. I started my own pop-up Gucci's Midnight Ramen. Anyway, I mean, like very quickly, like I realized that, like I only ever worked for two people, right? In
Yeah.
in the culinary world. I only ever worked for two restaurants. One was kind of like a mom and pop, like fine dining Japanese restaurant.
Yep.
And they got, James Beard Award, Best New Restaurant, New York Times. They got all these awards. Then I went to work for Martine, and like, why does he need me, right? Like, this guy's got what, like double-digit Michelin stars, restaurants all over the world. What can I offer him, right? And I think the experiences were quite different. The management styles were quite different. But I think because, like, while I was working for them, like, I knew already that I wanted to open my own restaurant.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
knew that in order to do so, I mean, I was naive at the time. Like, I thought I need to work with the best if I want to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish someone had told me, and maybe I should tell people now, right? That I had said, I want to go work for someone who has the best culture.
Huh.
You know, I never
Yeah.
thought of it that way. I never thought of, hey, I want to go work for the place that has the best culture and learn how they do that. I want to go work for the place where the people are the happiest and they have the best teamwork. Like, how do they cultivate that? You
Mm.
know? Um,
Because that's totally different than necessarily winning awards.
exactly. And who gets awards in those categories? Right? And like, and how would you even begin to like judge and filter for that? Right?
Right.
Um, And I think, awards, especially James Beard Awards, have kind of changed over time, evolved over time to have a different, system of how they, kind of evaluate and who gets nominated and whatever, right? Who votes. Um, but, people don't really know. Like, they don't know
Mm.
what really goes on in this industry. I work in this industry and sometimes I don't even know, right? Like when you find out later, like when you go and read these articles and you find out later, you're kind of like, oh shoot, like there's like toxic workplace culture, right? Like, and that happens in any industry. That happens in like too often, right? In
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
industries. Um, and that's something that like we're really focused on at Pagu. We've been around 8 years now, but we want to be that example of, people are happy here. The food tastes good because the people are happy here, right? The people making the food are happy here making your food. And people like each other here, right?
Yeah.
Like this might not be like the most, like impressive resume of people or the most like languages spoken between whoever, the most degrees, like whatever your, quantitative metrics are, right? But to say that you have good people who care. I don't know. It
Mm.
sounds really basic, but but it matters. And we get those kinds of reviews all the time, and I still read those and they make me really happy, even though I'm someone who's like, but tell me what was wrong with your food, like tell me what you did better.
And
Um,
that's because you're looking to improve.
well, I've just been conditioned that way, right? Like my
Okay.
entire life is not like, accept the praise and pat yourself on the back. It's just like, no, look for the minutia, look for the teeny tiny spots, look for, the problems and fix them.
Yeah.
Um, and there's always plenty of stuff to fix. I'm chief of pugs, but also I'm, sometimes the plumber and sometimes the electrician and sometimes, you know, do it until I can't do it, until I gotta call someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Small business owner, they call it.
Well, and I
Yeah.
would think that's beneficial and interesting for you of why you can stay so engaged.
hmm Yeah, I think I developed ADHD working in restaurants, so I've never officially been diagnosed, but some people are single task, masters, crafts, artisans, and I'm, like I said, master of none or, multitasker galore. How many tabs and windows do I have open? Who knows?
Well, and because none of that stuff matters, though, ultimately, right? As far as the value that you get from your life.
hmm Yeah, I mean, I think that owning and operating a restaurant has been I mean, a lot of people say it's like, oh, one of the hardest things you'll ever learn to do.
Yep.
But I think people also underestimate just how much you receive, right? Like you give a lot, I give a lot, um, but you receive so much back and it feels good. And I think that as humans, like we look for validation. And, a restaurant is a good place for you if you like that kind of validation. If that's just like every day of like, hey, how'd you like your food? Oh, how'd you like your experience? How'd you like your drink? Right. And when people tell you that they like something, that feels good.
Yep.
Whether or not you made it, maybe you just, were the busser at their table or you just ran the drink to them. Um, but either way, people smiling, having a good time, if they feel good, then you feel good. And that sounds super basic, but I think that's why I went into it, like
Mm.
my grandmother, I saw her create that in her restaurant spaces. I used to hang at the bar with Tony, the bartender, practicing my Spanish in fourth grade because he's from Guatemala. Um, And I used to just like feel good about like, having Shirley Temples and being like, oh, cool, I have someone to practice my Spanish with that isn't just one of my friends that plays soccer. And
Yeah.
like to me that like felt good. And he like made me this drink and I would ask him about, his family in Guatemala and um in my very broken like fourth grade Spanish. Um and those are feel good moments that some people just like carry with them. Like, why do I remember that, right? Like, you just carry that with you forever. Um, and so I like restaurants because I think that restaurants can provide that joy for people every day. And I think that restaurants can provide it, I don't know, in a way that's like limitless, like
No, what do you
you're
mean limitless? I wouldn't think of a restaurant as being limitless joy.
unlimited. It's just like we don't run out, right? Like we don't run out of that, right? Like we don't suddenly say like, oh, well, like you're cut off, like that's enough for you,
Yep.
right? And so like we just keep giving um and because we're giving, we're also receiving.
Yeah.
And when I thought about this during COVID, it's like, what is the etymology of restaurant, right? Restaurant is to restore,
Hmm.
right? And so what are we restoring? Who are we restoring? right? And in part, it's we are restoring ourselves because we give and take, we give and we receive, right? And so it feels good to give, and so you receive that feel good feeling, right? But also, I mean, for us, restorative meant, food is nourishing, food is healthy, it's good for you. And so we got involved in, work beyond transaction, work beyond, okay, you can afford to eat here. Great. Like you left me a good tip. Awesome. Right. Like it went beyond that. And during COVID, we founded two nonprofits out of the restaurant, Off Their Plate and Project Restore Us. And these were food security initiatives that we started so that we could figure out how do we get food from restaurants to essential worker communities? How do we get food to folks who are stuck at home, who are elders, who need culturally appropriate food, who might have diabetes? That was the kind of problem solving that we were doing. And finally, I think we unlocked that, little forgotten secret that restaurants are to restore, right? They are
Yeah. Wow.
to replenish and to nourish and to feed everyone, because at the end of the day, everybody deserves to eat, right?
Yep. I'm with you there.
But yeah, I mean, the way our society is set up is, kind of broken, right? There's plenty of food in the world, but not everyone has access to it. And so, I don't know, we found that being in Cambridge, Mass, like we just had a special place in this neighborhood that, through social media, through Slack, through word of mouth, through the press helping us amplify, we were able to find this huge network of volunteership. With Off Their Plate, we scaled to 12 cities nationwide within 3 months. We raised over $12 million. Like Barack Obama took one of my photos that I took of my employees, like put on his Instagram. Like we really moved quickly to feed people during that kind of critical time where people in hospitals were just like, what's next? How do you do this? How do you quarantine people? Which ward is for what, right? Like, are we spraying down
Yeah.
boxes? Do you have PPE? Like, just so many unknowns and so much chaos.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, like to feed people is just kind of like basic human nature every day. Every day, you gotta eat, you gotta sleep, you gotta poop, and we did one of those things. We help people do one of those things. And because we're restaurants, we know how to feed people, right?
Well,
And
and
then
that's such a macro, big picture concept of what a restaurant is. And I think you're exactly right. I think you're spot on with that. But I've never thought about restaurants in that kind of grand sense.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think about it until I had, I guess, time to think about it when I was driving around bringing people food.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is exactly what a restaurant should be? And so now, I mean, of course, 2025, right? Like we're not in that critical 2020 moment anymore.
Yep.
Um, But, where do we as restaurant owners, knowing what we know as chefs, having gone through this, having lived through this, what do we do with that information, right? Like, what do we do with that, like, ability? Because we know that people in our immediate communities are still food insecure.
Yeah.
And so there is something that we can continue to do, right?
Are
We
the
can
nonprofits still going?
Yeah, so Project Restore Us is still going. And so Project Restore Us, we build culturally appropriate grocery boxes and we delivered them door to door from restaurants in the Boston area, woman-owned small BIPOC businesses, packing these groceries, volunteer drivers taking them door to door. We partnered with community organizations who knew who their food insecure recipients were. So maybe it was Chinese Progressive Association, maybe it was Viet Aid, maybe La Comunidad, um, you know, over a dozen local organizations who had, Haitian immigrants here, Cantonese, elders in Chinatown, homeless shelters in Jamaica Plain, etc. And so we designed, instead of, designing fancy menus, designing, croquetas, like I was saying earlier, my job became to design culturally appropriate grocery boxes that would be lasting so that people wouldn't think, oh, I'm only getting one hot meal today. What does tomorrow look like? But they were getting this like 25-pound bag of rice, 25-pound bag of beans, a case of eggs, a gallon of milk. For the Vietnamese, they might want coconut milk. For the Chinese, they might want a giant head of cabbage. And so it became designing these boxes for these families. And I mean, the best feelings were hand delivering them door to door. The best feelings were when they weren't home that first day, going the second day and bringing it over to them. Receiving, messages, text messages. I gave people my phone number, because again, I speak a few languages, so people felt comfortable
Right.
now. Um, and just hearing them say, hey, like you designed that for 4 weeks, but it actually lasted me 6 weeks. Like, thank you so much. Or other people saying, hey, like, would it be possible to get another box, like for my neighbor? Or, oh, after 7 weeks, like we actually still need it for another week. Is there funding to provide that? And so we said, hey, yeah, we'll find it. We'll do it. And the best part was that our restaurant people, like our regulars who come to our restaurant, who patronize our restaurants, they got behind it.
Mm.
Like they were like, "Hey, can I give you like $600 and like just sponsor like as many boxes, like put this towards as many boxes as you can. Like I'll continue to pay you this until you tell me that like there is no need anymore." So
Wow.
people are so generous in those ways. And super generous too in terms of, volunteering and driving those groceries to all those homes directly. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. Really, I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah. So, like the silver lining of COVID, I think a lot of people found it to be some of the darkest times, but like we had fun. I had two kids. You probably just heard them saying boo. Um, I had two kids during that time. It was a busy time. We got a lot done. But I also think that becoming a mother during that time probably made me a little bit more aware of just like I am not alone.
Yeah.
Like one, I'm not doing anything alone. I don't need to feel scared, right? But two, like I'm not alone in doing anything and feeling certain ways. Like I need to provide, I need to nourish, like, and just like having that kind of motherly instinct. Not to say that I didn't have it before, but it was, kicking inside of me to remind me every day.
Yeah, literally. Shout out to the kids. I love shouting out to kids on the show. Not that kids are our target audience, so to speak, but yeah, I mean, kids provide such a fresh perspective for us to interpret things.
Yeah, man, there's this one, I gotta share one more like,
Yeah, please.
story. This one time, we were delivering, so I had my daughter Olive with me, my husband Mark. It was like the one day I had off in a long, long time, and it was summer, and there was a few grocery boxes left from the day before, and that was common, right? If people weren't home, we would try and go deliver the next day to not miss them.
Hmm.
And so I called my buddy Lily at Mass Jobs with Justice, and I said, "Hey Lily, like where do you want me to drop these boxes?" Because the previous day the volunteers had all come. That was Sunday. Usually people did it on the weekends when they had time. And so on Monday, it was up to me, and I was supposed to I'd promised Mark, my partner, that we could go to the beach that day with my daughter Olive, who I think was like barely one at the time, right?
Okay.
Um, and we were still like wearing masks like at the beach. Like this is how like in it we were in the thick of COVID, right?
Oh, yes.
I was like, oh, I was like, well, perfect, because and I always have this tendency to like make little family adventures also about work. So I was like, okay, you want to go to the beach? Well, perfect, because I have to drop off these grocery boxes in Lynn, and I was pregnant with Rio and my son. And so I was like, I can't carry these by myself. And so we made a family trip of it where we went to the beach in Nahant, And there was this house down the street that we stopped at before we went to the beach so we could drop the groceries. And Lily said, yeah, just go to this address and ring the doorbell and drop the groceries there. There's some families living there.
Okay.
Like all she said. It was like really beautiful street, like right down like towards the end of the beach. Um, and these like beautiful historic homes. It just looked like an old mansion of sorts. I was like, oh, I wonder, like I've never seen this part of Lynn. Like where are we, right? Because I'm usually just at the beach right there. And so I ring the doorbell. No one really, comes to the door. So, I text Lily. She says, "Oh, go around back." I was like, "All right, I'll go around back." I mean, she's not there, right? But she knew the recipients.
Okay.
So I go around back and we bring the groceries, and then, just like these young kids, like probably between the ages of 6 to 15, like start coming down the stairs of this house, and they're like a little bit cautious. They didn't want to open the door. There's really no adult, but probably like a dozen, 2 dozen kids like show up. And they're just like, you know, cautious, but then, I explained to them that I'm here to drop off the food and, that's it. Like, this is, that's all I'm here for. Like, I'm just here to bring the food,
Uh-huh.
just a messenger. And it's all for them. And yeah, if they have any, feedback, just to get in touch with us. And they were just so grateful. And I called Lily afterwards and I was like, what was this like magical place? It was like this beautiful little yard, this home, right? And like, what, like a dozen, 2 dozen kids just like come down on their own. Like, where are we? And she said, oh, yeah, like I forgot to mention, like, those are all kids who have been separated from their parents, from their families at the border. These are all like migrants.
Wow.
All living together in this home and like they could really use that food. Um and and I went to the beach that day with my family and I don't know, and I just thought about that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, we have so much to be grateful for, and I was like, I wish I could explain this to my kids, we maybe one day maybe one day I can tell them that story. But it's just that you never know. You see this like beautiful home, you see kids like running around the yard, you never know like what the story is. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like what brought us together, like a few bags of rice, few bags of beans, right? Some eggs, onions, potatoes, oranges, apples. But it's the food, right? It
Yeah.
connects us.
Yeah. Well, and
Uh,
because I mean, as you pointed out, it's something that we all do, uh,
yeah.
right? And it's a way of not only doing something together, but it's a way of actually bringing together more community.
hmm Yeah. Yeah, and you don't need to speak, the language. You don't need to know. You don't even need to like exchange words, right? Um, and yeah, so I I feel like those were some of the biggest lessons that I learned about like myself, about how things work, like nonprofits, like food equity, food access. Um, it was incredible the volunteership that we were able to rally like nationwide with Author Plate, locally with Project Restore Us. I mean, this got the attention of local like congresswomen. Ayanna Pressley came to visit me. Maura Healey, Mayor Wu. I mean, Maura Healey's now the governor. At the time, she was the AG. I
Yep.
had no idea who these politicians were, and they came like knocking on my door. Like I never had a PR company. Like we were just doing this and people found out. And I think, food writers at the time like didn't have that much to write about. So they came to interview, like we didn't have a press team that was like reaching out, being like, hey, you want to write about us? We're doing, but it's kind of cool that like even the people in power cared and listened to what we were doing and they said, hey, like we want we want to help. Like, we want to have access to you because you are on the grounds doing this, because you are communicating directly, with these recipients, with these community organizations, and we want to hear, what do our constituents need. And I was like, what do you do? How does that work? And yeah, so I just keep learning. I think that kind of like exponential learning is what was so interesting, and that community, coming together to want to work on these projects together, that was really powerful. And all because of food, like because of right? People had time, people made time then. Like people
Yeah.
made time for other people then. I think we as Americans we're busy, especially as like New Englanders. We're so busy. I mean, you
Yep.
and I, we're so busy. But we're also busy like doing people things. Sometimes people are busy and they might not be doing like people things. I don't know. But it was really nice that people wanted to do things for other people.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Well, and I want to hear more about the lessons that you learned about yourself coming when we come back from this commercial break. Dear listener, we are speaking with Tracy Chang from Pagu in Cambridge, a James Beard nominated Spanish-Japanese restaurant.
Want to connect with Jay? Dial in as we continue raising your inner voice.
Are you worried about the stock market, your 401k, or rising costs? Hi, I'm Luke Noble of Noble Financial Group. As a certified financial planner, I know you can't plan for everything, but our dedicated team of professionals can better prepare you so your money lasts as long as you do. Let us help. Visit noblefinancialgroupllc.com.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through MML Investor Services. Member SIPC. Noble Financial Group is not an affiliate or subsidiary of MML Investor Services.
Hi, I'm Paul from Gentili Brewing, and we've been open for 9 years this March. Celebrate with fresh cans of Allen's Rye Pale Ale, South African Pilsner, Imperial Porter, Divergent IPA, and our own Irish Red. Come on down to 59 Park Street in Beverly to grab some to go. Want to try before you buy? Sample them all in our custom flight board. Our tap room is more than just beer. We have many events planned, including live music, food pop-ups, yoga, and even a book signing. For details, visit gentilibrewing.com. That's GENTILE brewing.com.
What does living a better life mean? And what's your process in figuring that out? If you want to join in the conversation live, tune in Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you want to gather your thoughts first, record a voice memo and email it to jay.foss@me.com, because I would love to have your voice in this conversation. If you think someone else might need a conversation like this one, then let them know to get involved.
Hi, folks. This is Gerard Moynihan of Moynihan Lumber. Professional builders choose Anderson Windows because they are the #1 trusted and recommended window and door brand in the United States. Anderson Windows and patio doors offer beautiful natural wood interiors, low maintenance exteriors, and outstanding energy efficiency. See the complete line of Anderson Windows on display at Moynihan Lumber in Beverly, North Reading, and Plastown, New Hampshire, or visit us at MoynihanLumber.com.
Moynihan Lumber, we measure up.
Not just another talk show. It's time to be heard. Online and on air. Raising your inner voice with Jay Foss.
And thanks for rejoining us here on Raising Your Inner Voice. This evening, we're speaking with Tracy Chang, who's the chef owner of Pagu in Cambridge. And I'm curious, like Curious George, Tracy, what... You mentioned that you learned a lot about yourself through all of this. What did you learn about yourself?
what did I learn about myself? Um, I learned that, my skills are applicable to other industries. I learned that being a chef, is more powerful than just, cooking and being at the stove. And I feel like these were always ideas that I, kind of like had in my head, but weren't really, kind of like put into practice and proven until until like I did these nonprofits, which I always thought, oh yeah, in my 40s, 50s, right? Like, like before I retire, like I'm gonna do this, right?
Yeah.
But I'm really glad that I did it when I did because, um, yeah, because it gave me just greater sense of purpose and it gave me, just like clarity in terms of like what I'm capable of, but also what I'm capable of helping other people realize that they too are capable of. Because so many chefs across the country, they messaged me and they said, how do I get started? How do I participate in Off Their Plate? Right? Like, what did you guys do? Right? And it was as simple as sharing a recipe, an SOP of, standard operating procedures of like how to do it. At the end of the day, like we all know how to cook. I mean, most of us, I mean, the chefs, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
These
Yeah.
chefs, these restaurant owners, they know how to cook, but they don't always know how to get started when, thinking of an idea such as like, oh, how do I make these meals like for this hospital, and get it to this hospital? How do I pack these groceries and get it to this homeless shelter, right? How did you find those people? How did you find these community
Yeah. Yep.
I said, well, I talked to them. Like, oh, how did you know that was going to work? I didn't. I just tried, and you have to have a certain amount of, I think, fearlessness, audacity, willingness to, kind of trip and fall and get up again. And also just like humility, right? Like call people, ask them how to do it. That's fine. Like we had people writing us from Japan being like, hey, we want to do this in our community. How do we do that?
Wow.
I really loved just kind of like the sharing and the open source nature of it all in terms of like, hey, like this doesn't belong to any one person, right? We're happy to share this. This isn't like our IP or anything. We're not doing this because we're trying to make like money off of this,
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like hard to exist under those conditions. Like where else are you going to exist where people are doing this because they believe it is the right thing to do and they're volunteering to do it? And, whether they're volunteering for like a day to drive groceries from here to there, or they're volunteering for like 6 months to be like a dispatcher and, managing like Airtable databases, etc. There was a lot of logistics in how we operated both organizations, and that was cool. I mean, like for me as like an undergrad business, major, it was like a cool startup life kind of feeling. But again, like I said, like realizing that a chef is not just a chef, but is capable of so much more, and figuring out how to communicate that so that other chefs realize that they have that ability as well.
Yeah, that's so inspiring. Thanks for sharing all of this. Dear listener, as we wrap up the show, I mean, that a chef may not just be a chef. You, dear listener, are not just you. You are more than that. And I hope that you gained a lot from this conversation. Tracy, thank you so much for being here. And please be kind and gentle with yourself and share that same grace with others.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please help spread the word about raising your inner voice. Join the conversation live. Email jay.foss@me.com to suggest ideas to explore. Also share this podcast with your friends. Let those who need conversations like this have a chance to check it out.
Then let them know to get involved.